In this session, we are going to go through a sample programming question. We are going to go over the process of analyze the question and convert it into a computer program. The question is a cookie recipe which will produce 48 cookies based on this much amount of ingredients. The question asks you to write a program that asks the user how many cookies to make, display the number of cups of each ingredient. So how to analyze this question and create the program? We have defined this programming process before. It starts by clearly define what the program is to do. Visualize the program running on the computer. Use design tools to create a model of the program. Check the model for logical errors. This is the conceptual design process, then followed by the actual development and debugging process, which is enter the code and compile it, correct any errors found during compilation. Then you run the program with test data for input, correct any runtime errors found while running the program, and finally validate the result of the program. So let's go back to the question and see what the program is to do. The question says, write a program that asks the user how many cookies to make and display the number of each ingredient. So let me copy this into a notepad. And so it basically, the first step is ask the user how many cookies to make. And the second step is to display the number of cups of each ingredient. But apparently, there's one step in between that we usually miss, which is calculate the number of cups of each ingredient, right? And this is actually a very general process flow of any program. Anytime you start with a program, you always want to get user input first. Once you get the user input of parameters, you will perform certain calculations. And finally, once the calculation is done, you will output the result. No matter what program you are writing, it is always the same process that you need to get some input from somewhere. And then finally, eventually, after calculation, you will output the result so that human beings or other computers can make use of it. We will run into this, we will utilizing this process flow all through the course, as well as in the future, in your future job and in your future course. So anytime you write a program, always put these three as a framework of your programming flow. So this is the first step. We defined what this program is to do. And the second step is to visualize the program running on the computer. In order to visualize this, we need to think what's the input and the output methodology. If you are handling with the graphic user interface, you will probably need to draw the pictures of your user interface first and define user actions. For our simple course and simple question, we're only going to use standard input and output, which means keyboard and the monitor console. So what will happen in our visualization is that we will have a standard input getting the number of cookies, and then the number of ingredients will be calculated and output to standard output. Step 3 is use design tools to create a model of program. Now, there are many different design tools available. For a simple question like this, we will just use a notepad, type in what is needed, what need to do, and then it should be good enough to translate into a Java program. However, when you run into a larger programs, larger questions, larger applications, people frequently use different design tools, which is called CASE, computer-aided software engineer, to create a model of the program. And finally, we need to check the model for logical errors. So what is the design flow? We use some human language to describe. First, we need to get, actually I would like to use this more generalized form of description of process flow so that this can be utilized later, right? So first, we ask a user, which means get number of cookies from standard input. And second, perform required calculation. Remember, we have 3 ingredients, right? So number of, what are the ingredients? It's sugar, butter, and flour. So for sugar, number of sugar, we want to calculate these 3. Number of flour, and butter. Equals to, so we have the number of cookies. In order to calculate how much, we need to 48 divided by number of cookies times 1.5. And we will repeat this for the other 3. It's a 1 and a 2.75. And finally, we will print number of sugar. And actually it should be print line, right? So we print line number of sugar, print line number of butter, and print line number of flour. Now, now this looks like Java code, but it is not. For example, this print line should be properly translated into system.out.println and with parentheses. But it definitely, this free-form expression definitely is easier to write and easier to understand. So this is called pseudocode. It looks like code, but it is not code. It's called pseudocode. And we will use pseudocode for our design throughout this course. Now, we already get this model, and this pretty much finishes our conceptual design. Next step, we are going to create the code, compile it, and do a debugging loop. Make sure the program runs fine in Eclipse.